Hey geeks, what's going on? My name is Brand. Welcome back to the Geek XP. Last night we played D&D and our adventurers decided to become badasses. So in case you forgot, last week when we played Dungeons & Dragons, our band of intrepid adventurers were making their way south from the city of Arendor, and on their way to the town of Phandalin, they found the horses of their employer Gundren Rockseeker and his escort, the warrior Sildar Hallwinter. I'm running the Lost Mines of Phandelver adventure from Dungeons & Dragons, but I'm making some adjustments to it for myself. So they followed the goblin trail to the Cragmaw Cave. They went in there, got caught by both floods, got separated, and then two of them got ambushed by four goblins up on the bridge. Due to some skill, wit, and daring, they managed to escape, bloodied but alive. They rested outside the caves, and that's where we picked up this game session. If you wanted more in-depth, then you guys can watch last week's previous video here. So we picked up the session. They had just rested in the thickets and brush outside the caves. The rogue was keeping watch. And I decided that the goblins, while they weren't going to actively pursue their enemy because they thought they had defeated them, they were taking a couple of other precautions. So I had one of the goblins go to the kennels, and he was going to wait there with the wolves so that if anyone came in, he could release the wolves and they could attack the adventurers. I then had the two remaining goblins from room 7 go into their barracks with Ymik and his 5 other goblins and have one of those goblins come and join them in the other room. So there were 3 goblins up in the other room. And so the adventurers go in, and fortunately, as they're stealthing, none of them wear heavy armor. Only one of them wears armor, actually, and that person is the rogue, who's also pretty stealthy. So in terms of like their group stealth checks, I think the lowest was the warlock, and that's just because she's not trained in stealth. But yeah, the rogue is the only one with armor because it's the warlock, a monk, and a barbarian, and none of them wear armor. So they managed to sneak in. The wolves get a good perception check, but the goblin, I gave him advantage because he has the wolves to alert him, but he rolled like 2 8s. And with his perception bonus, I think of 0, he did not notice them. Like, the wolves are barking, but like I had him doing something else, like picking at his teeth or something. And maybe I should have had him notice that, like, if the wolves notice something, the goblin notices, but I let them get past. So they sneak past the wolves. They weren't, like, trying to get their attention or, like, harassing them in any way, so I figured it was fine. And they didn't break the chains. So they sneak up past them, and they go into a shadowy tunnel on the left that the monk had explored last week. And they make their way up there. He spies into the cavern on the left-hand side of the tunnel when he makes it to the top of that passage, and he sees the goblins that are camped out in that room. So everyone sneaks up. They manage to stealth into the darkened tunnel to the right of the tunnel that they're coming from. And that's when they notice they can see in now clearly. They can see that there are the 4 goblins remaining in that room. And then there is a bigger goblin boss up on this cliff with a injured, battered, and captive Sildar. So they know it's not Gundren, but they're like, crap, okay, we have to save him. So they get a nice surprise round, and they obliterate these goblins. Warlock gets top of initiative, damages one with an Eldritch Blast, Rogue finishes it off. Barbarian rages. She didn't rage last session. I mean, she's new. She hasn't played yet. Sharon, who plays Skye, the Dragonborn Barbarian. So she does her first rage, pulls out her short swords, and runs in. One-shots one goblin, and then finishes her movement and damages another one. Then the monk, Eldrin, played by Richard, he runs forward, and he finishes off that one and wounds the other goblin. I think that goblin had like 2 health left. And so this all happens immediately. And then Ymik, the goblin boss, he gets top of initiative. He rolled really well. And so he immediately is just like, truce or this human dies. While goblins aren't smart, he's a goblin boss. And he's intelligent enough to know that many of the other civilized races are sentimental. So he's hoping that he can maybe strike a bargain. So they stop. The other goblin's sort of like holding. So he's got like a broken collarbone from where the monk like elbowed him. And he's holding. And we get this interesting truce. So they are not immediately attacking Ymik, and he has a prepared action that if anyone attacks him, he will try to cut the throat of this human and throw him down the cliff. And Sildar's at 1 HP. So they're willing to hear him out, and Ymik, the goblin boss, he tells them that the leader of this cave and this little Cragmaw group is a bugbear named Clark. And that if they kill him, then he will let this human go. They try to negotiate to see if he'll release him first, but Yemek is paranoid. You think about goblins; they live where it's it's strongest lead, and so there's always like constant like backstabbing and treachery just to get up the chain of command. So he doesn't trust them. That if he gives them, because goblins don't really necessarily trust each other, so he would have no reason to trust these other people. So he needs to see Clarg first, and even if they bring him Clarg, he wants to ransom off Sildar. So they have this exchange, and he tries to convince him, and then Leo, playing Finn, the halfling rogue, while they're talking, he's like, "Oh, that big ugly thing? Oh, remember that, guys? We killed him so much." And I really liked this idea that I hadn't thought of before, about the idea of tricking Yemek into thinking that he had killed the bugbear. So I haven't rolled a deception check, but I want it to be pretty difficult. Like, while he has seen these adventurers come through here and like wipe out these goblins, he's intimidated by Clarg, and he doesn't think that any one of them could maybe fight him one-on-one. And goblins, while they work together, they don't really have a good sense, I feel, of true like teamwork and synergy. So he is still doubtful that they could have killed him, but he rolled like a 19 on his check. So Yemek is like, "Oh, you guys killed him. Awesome. Yeah, like bring me his body, and once I have it, you guys just, Sildar, I'll release this human to you." And so they're like, no, you saw how much we killed them. So they have this banter, and they go like, "Well, let's converse." And so he's sitting there, and he's starting to get a little irritated. Sildar, of course, is like, he's like, "Don't trust him," and Yemek is like, "Be quiet," and like bashes his head. So they converse, and they come up with this weird plan. So what they decide to do is, Agnes has this winter cloak, and they decide to go off and say they're going to bring his body. The elf monk will stay to keep an eye on the goblin, and they're going to wrap Skye, the dragonborn barbarian, in this cloak, and they're going to drag her in and be like, "Here you go. Here is Clarg's body." And so they go off and they do this. And they wrap her in the cloak, and they wait a couple minutes, and then they drag her back, and they lay the cloak down, but they don't bring it up to him. He's up on this 10-foot high cliff, and there's a little stairway. And so Yemek gets all excited seeing this body, which is large enough. This could be Clarg for sure. So he asks them to uncover the blanket, because he's not going to let his hostage go. And this was a really cool plan, but then I realized this sort of like stipulation is that he is not going to let go of this hostage unless he thinks he's already dead. He needs to know that Clarg is dead so that he can exert his control over the Kragmaw hideout. So he doesn't want to let him go. And to him, if they've already killed him, as long as he sees Clarg's body, then they're good. But the heroes know that as soon as they unveil this cloak, and that their barbarian is there and not Clarg, that their Sildar might get killed. So they're like, "No, I don't want to touch it, it's gross." And so we have this sort of impasse where they're like, "Just let our friend go," and Yemek's like, "Well, show me Clarg." And they just keep on going back and forth and back and forth. And also what I realized, because two of them never played before, Leo and Sharon, and Georgia has played once, but not very much. And I sort of take a lot of my knowledge about D&D for granted, and Rashard probably knows. But I realized in the way they were describing their plan to me and what they were saying to Yemek is that none of these other players knew what a bugbear was. Georgia thought it was like an owl bear, which I had shown her pictures of, that it was just like a bear but with a bug, like a beetle head. The other guys thought it might be some sort of bear thing. In their defense, the name bugbear is a little bit misleading compared to what it is. I'm not sure exactly the origin of that name. But I realized that these players are trying to convince this goblin that they've killed something that they've never seen before, which makes the later reveal of Clarg really cool. So they're at this impasse, and Georgia, playing Agnes, their human warlock, is fed up. She wants to find Gundren. Sildar probably knows where he's been taken, because they asked Yemek where Gundren had been taken, and he told them, "Oh, Clarg took him." I'll use my goblin voice. "Clarg took him to his cave, then I don't know what happened to him." And I rolled a deception check, because he does know what they did with the dwarf. but he rolled terribly, and I checked all their passive insights. I have a little cheat sheet, and they all could tell he was lying. So it's like, you guys can tell he's lying about not knowing where Gundren is. So that puts him a little bit on edge. And looking back, they were making decisions that were making him more uneasy, and maybe I should have just let that go, so that maybe this could be passed. But I mean, hindsight is 20/20. I think it worked out fine anyway, in a way. So they can tell he's lying. So he tells them that the dwarf has been taken to Cragmaw Castle, and they ask him, like, well, where is that? And he's smart enough to know directions, but he's also a goblin, so he can't give them precise directions. And so he tells them, northeast. So he tells them northeast, but on the map that I've given them, northeast is most of the rest of the area. So that tells them virtually nothing. But it gives them a direction, a general area, and a name to look for, which will work out in our next session, I think. And it's also a goblin, so they don't know how much they can trust his word. But he seems fairly honest, to them at least. So what ends up happening is Agnes, who wants to find Gundren, gets fed up, and she tries to shoot her Eldritch Blast at the stalagmite behind Ymik to maybe dislodge the rocks and knock him down so that someone can run up there and pull Sildar away. So she fires her Eldritch Blast and misses, and the attack itself triggers Ymik's prepared action, and so he gets attacked, and so he takes his cleaver and he cuts Sildar. And I roll for damage. It's an automatic critical because his target is incapacitated. Deals a good amount of damage, but not enough to kill him outright. But he is now dying. And then Ymik throws Sildar's body off the cliff, and I roll bludgeoning damage for the fall, and he fails a death saving throw right off the bat from that damage. Combat ensues. The barbarian jumps out of the blanket enraged at hearing this combat, and Ymik, seeing that, he leaps off the cliff to try to tackle her. She manages to push him off, and they very quickly dispatch him. I mean, he's a goblin boss with 12 hit points, but even so, he can't deal with a whole party of adventurers by himself, which is why he didn't kill Sildar earlier. He knows he can't beat them, but his one objective, his one hope, is that if he can get them to prove that Clark is dead, he might be able to slip away and gain control of Cragmaw hideout once they're gone. So they dispatch him, and the monk checks Sildar. I roll Sildar's second death saving throw, and he succeeds. So he's dying, and the way I had it is that since the damage wasn't enough to outright kill him, he checks him, and there's blood all over Sildar's torso, but he's breathing very shallowly. He's very shallow. He looks really weak, but the goblin Ymik missed his neck and actually cut across his collarbone and upper chest. Still a lot of bleeding, but not enough to kill him outright. So the monk uses a medicine check to stabilize him, and now that he's stabilized, when Agnes comes over and uses a Yusufer healer's kit, he heals for 8 hit points with her roll, and so he is now conscious and alive. So they managed to save him, and so he tells them, that he's been, he was captured. They took all his stuff, and they ask him if he knows where Cragmaw Cave is or Cragmaw Castle, and he doesn't know, but he thinks that someone in Phandalin might know, just to redirect the characters towards their objective. I had no worries that they were going to end up going there anyway, and they were like, okay, well, let's go. And I realized that these characters, none of them are really, do-gooder heroes, with maybe the exception of Eldrin, the elf monk. But for the most part, Agnes is a little bit more neutral, but for the most part, I feel like they're more of a mercenary sort of kind of group. But Sildar is saying, he's grateful for them saving him, and he didn't like them before. He didn't trust them when he was meeting up with Gundren, but they have saved him, so he at least owes them his life. But he says, look, we have to take care of the leader of these goblins. If we don't kill this bugbear, they're going to keep attacking the road, and I worry for the future of Phandalin if travelers can't come here without being harassed by these goblins. So they're like, okay, that's fine. The halfling gives him his short sword, so now he has a weapon, but no armor. But they have someone else for their turn at initiative. So they make their way across the bridge. Eldrin sneaks up ahead into the next cavern where there's a couple goblins, and he very quickly is able to sneak in there. He rolls a nat 20 on his stealth to get in there. So he sneaks up, gets a surprise attack on the first goblin, moves up, kills it outright with his staff. I imagine, I described as he uses his staff to swing it, and it breaks one goblin's neck, and then it is a combat roll, and like comes up with an open fist and shoves the other goblin's like nose bone into his brain, and he gets thrown back against the cave, and his allies who are hanging back with a torch in the tunnel, he goes forward with his dark vision and he disappears into the darkness, and they hear like the very silent thuds, and then he comes back and he's like, okay, we're good. So they cleared out that room, and the only room left is Clark's cave. So Eldrin, once again, the only reason why the rogue isn't stealthing up is that he doesn't have dark vision. The elf does, and the elf monk still has a decent stealth check. And Leo, the way he was playing Finn, is that he very much likes to stay out of direct combat. He likes to shoot from afar because he's still pretty squishy. So he sneaks up and he sees, and I describe this chamber full of supplies. There's a campfire with 2 goblins. And then I describe this large, muscular, hairy creature with this brown, matted like fur and hair that comes down from his head and goes over his back and shoulders. With these big pointed ears and this toothy, like gnarled maw with a wolf next to him. He's got this big morning star. And, they assume that this is Clark, and I put down my miniature for Clark, which is I have some painted bugbear miniatures that I've made, and that was a really cool moment. They were like, "Oh man," because he's much more intimidating than the goblins that they have been facing. So Eldrin goes back, describes it to them, and the group goes to stealth up to the cavern. So they roll good stealth, and I roll perception for the goblins and Clark and the wolf, and the wolf rolls a natural 20. So with that in mind, even though their stealth checks were good, none of them nat 20. So I'm gonna say that the wolf notices them and doesn't notice, sees them, but knows that something's wrong in the next area. So it starts to snarl and growl and look at that entrance to the cavern. And so Clark, he's like, "What's that?" And he commands the goblins to go see what's going on. So the goblins, get up and they reach the top of the stairs just as the elf monk reaches the top of the stairs. So there's this brief little "Hi!" moment, and then Clark just roars, and so no one gets surprised around. I think this is one of the first combats that someone hasn't been surprised, except for the ambush, I guess, from last week. So we get into this huge brawl. Clark gets first initiative. He runs forward and starts duking it out with the monk, but I could not roll. I don't think I had such a hard time rolling above a 7. On so many of these rolls, and the monk now his armor class is 18 because he's got an 18 wisdom and dex. He's got a 7 charisma though, and a 9 constitution or something. He has his weaknesses, but he's super hard to hit. And even the wolf, when it runs up and attacks the target of Clark, they get advantage because of pack tactics, but even that I could not roll very well. So this fight ensues. Clark can't seem to hit anything, which is actually fortunate because this is a tough fight. Bugbear deals 2d8 plus 2 damage, I think, with its Morning Star. So it has enough damage in it to potentially take down one of these adventurers in one shot. And if it crits, it could take someone out, it could kill them outright if they're low enough on health. So I was really worried, but they rolled really well. Barbarian used her second raging, got a crit on her first short sword attack against Clark. Sildar came in and crit against the wolf. The goblins retreated behind them some stalagmites and were shooting arrows from behind those for cover. And I think one of the things that really clinched this fight was Agnes, the warlock, used fairy fire, which she didn't know what it really was. She was going to use Eldritch Blast, and so for these first couple of sessions, I've been providing some ideas to some of the new players so that they know what they can do. And I said, what are your first level spells? And she used a Fae Pact Warlock, so she had taken Fairy Fire and Comprehend Languages. And I described what because she was like, it makes them glow, so I don't know what that does for us. And I described to her that, this glow makes it easier to hit them, and they also don't get benefits from invisibility, and everyone gets advantage on their attacks against her. So she casts it, and she can affect the 2 goblins and the bugbear without affecting any of their party members. The 2 goblins succeed their dex saving throws, but the bugbear does not. He rolls a 5. So, which is the target that really counted, I think, for that fight. So all of the attacks against Clark, for pretty much the whole fight, have advantage. So they're able to take him down pretty quickly. Sky, the Dragonborn Barbarian, does crit and takes him down to almost half health in the first round. It doesn't take too long for the wolf to get taken down, and once that happens, he attacks and then tries to escape. And he gets killed by a crit and a hit from the monk and the barbarian from opportunity attacks when he tries to flee. So they clear out the cave, they find some supplies in there, they find the crates and barrels with this blue lion symbol on them, they rest up a bit, they find some treasure, which was really exciting for them. Leo had lost most of all of his money gambling in Arendor before they left, and Agnes had spent most of her gold on her healer's kit in Arendor before they had departed. So they're pretty low on cash, which is an interesting thing in D&D. It's one of the things I like about early game, is the use of resources is a little bit more intense. So they get all these supplies, they find the 2 healing potions in the chest with the copper and silver pieces, but they don't save them. Leo, playing the rogue, Finn, drinks one of the potions to see what it does. No, they find out what it does when the warlock Agnes succeeds. She gets like a 22 Arcana check to identify them as healing potions. So he drinks one, and then they give the other one to Sildar, who got hit with a nasty goblin attack during the fight and got taken back down to 1 hit point. So they gave him the other one. So, which is an interesting choice. I kind of like that they, look, let's help out this guy. We need him to stay alive. They didn't necessarily have to do it. It wasn't the most optimal way, but I like that they are invested in these NPCs. Like, to me, that's a good sign. But they don't have any more healing potions. But fortunately, they still have the healer's kit from Agnes. They have a couple uses left. So they loot the cave. They get their treasure. They take a couple moments break. And at this point, I decided the one goblin and the wolves, he's looking around and all of his friends are dead. So he takes the wolves and he leaves. Just because I didn't feel like there was a need to weigh down the rest of this adventure. So they depart the caves, bring some of the supplies to the wagon. It's fine, and they travel back to Phandalin. And it's nighttime by the time they arrive. And as they arrive in Phandalin, I want to lay the seeds of the red brands. So as they're there's not too many people out and about. Most people are in bed at this time. It's like 9:30, 10 o'clock by the time they arrive in town. But as they are making their way down the main road, a group of 4 shady-looking men with red cloaks walk past them. They look at them, their eyes peering at them discerningly, and one of them grimaces and showing he's missing some teeth and spits on the ground in their direction. And they continue up the road, and they notice that 2 townsfolk give them a wide berth as they pass. So now they already can tell that there's something off, something's going on in this town. They ask Sildar, what's going on? But Sildar doesn't know. He's here to help Gundren and look for his friend Iarno, which he'll probably tell them about in the morning, but he is exhausted. So he's like, guys, we are tired, we have fought hard, but we need to rest at the inn. Stonehill Inn is this way, I've heard of it, supposedly it's really nice. So they go there, they put the oxen up at the stables right now because Barthen's Provisions is closed, and they all buy rooms for the night. The tavern was pretty much empty. Most of the people were filing out on their way in. There was just a couple people there nursing their drinks, but they have purchased rooms and rested for the night, and then they leveled up. So everyone's level 2 right now. Nothing super exciting at level 2. The next level is when everyone chooses their path for their class. So I'm excited to see what people choose. I know Georgia wants Agnes to be a Pact of the Chain, and she wants a pseudo-dragon for her familiar, so I'm super excited about that. And I know Richard was planning on becoming a Way of the 4 Elements monk, so he'll be the avatar. But I don't know if Sharon wants Sky to be a Primal Berserker or Primal Barbarian or Berserker. And then I don't know what Leo's going to do. So we'll have to see. My plans for next session is I'm going to prep for all the different quests they can pursue. Sildar will probably talk to them first. He's probably going to go to the Town Master's Hall first, get resupplied for himself. So they'll have some time to explore freely while he takes care of business. Leo and his halfling, he needs to go bring his goods that he smuggled to Halia Thornton. So he's going to be doing that, and the rest of the party's going to have to decide what they want to do. I want the citizens of Phandalin to be initially distrustful of this band of mercenaries that just sort of stumble in. They've had really bad luck. This mysterious stranger walked into their town a while back, and a couple months ago, and then the Red Brands appeared and have been causing trouble ever since. So they don't like strangers right now, and they're mistrustful of these people. And I want that to happen so that when they do something good, whether it's deal with the Red Brands, if they've proven that they've dealt with these goblins, you know, in a more permanent fashion, you know, do a favor for someone in town. I think dealing with the red brands will be the real linchpin in it. But once they've done that, the hospitality and gratitude of these townsfolk will become much more prevalent, and that contrast between arriving and not being trusted and not being liked by the townspeople to gaining their trust and seeing their hospitality and having earned it, I think will feel a lot more rewarding. It'll make the place feel like home because they sort of earned their place there. So that's where we're left off, and I'm excited to see which path and what route they want to take. I have some of the NPCs and shops ready so that if they want to explore, they have some encounters there. But I'm interested to see what they pursue. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I hope you guys enjoyed this more recent Dungeon Master's Journal. Hope you guys are enjoying sort of the chronicles of this Dungeons & Dragons game that I'm running. Comment below your thoughts on how the adventurers did. If you've run this adventure or played in it, let me know how it went for you guys. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more future content. You guys have been awarded some Geek XP. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay geeky, my friends.